Good afternoon. My name is Dwayne Eagle, Managing Director of Eagle Technology. On behalf of all of the team at Eagle, I want to offer a very warm welcome to the 2023 New Zealand Esri User Conference. I'm particularly excited to be here as this is the biggest one we've had so far in New Zealand. So it's very, very exciting to see you all. This is a massive crowd, so thank you for coming. This is a reflection of our growing GIS community here in New Zealand and across the South Pacific region. Eagle and Esri are very, very strong and continue to grow financially and with employees as well. That growth is driven by supporting you in your own areas of endeavour, so thank you very much. For this conference, our team has been working extremely hard for quite some time and very hard to put this together for 3 days for you, so I want to congratulate and thank them as well. This includes many different aspects of the work that this important community does. I want to personally encourage all of you to make the most of the time we have together, learn, connect, share, collaborate our collective work and achievements. I want to acknowledge the ongoing and invaluable support of the New Zealand Esri User Group, an organisation who have been part of this event's success for over 20 years. We are very lucky to have a number of special guests joining us here at this year's conference also. They include Danny Spielman, Global Director of Business Development at Esri, Ishmael Shavate, one of Esri's senior product managers who helped with in Survey 123 development. Kristen Gonzalez, a key member of the International Business Development team based in Redlands. Brett Dixon, infrastructure lead for APEC and a very long-time friend of this event. We also have a great keynote speaker for you who himself is kind of local. Greg Scott is the Interregional Advisor from GGIM at the United Nations in New York. You will hear from Greg very shortly. Finally, before I hand over to Scott Campbell to take you through this afternoon's event, it is my great pleasure to pass across to someone who I'm sure you all know and who has a short message for you. Esri's founder and president, Jack Dangermond. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jack Dangermond, and I want to join others in welcoming you to this wonderful event. Over 700 of you here. This is extraordinary, bringing New Zealand back together and the South Pacific. The purpose of this meeting is not new. It's gone on for some time. It's getting our users together to share and learn from each other and also get new briefings on some of the latest technology. You know, you are a very special group of people, and I want you to know how much I wish I was there. It reflects incredible footprints of contribution, whether it's addressing the disasters of cyclones or building cadastre systems or supporting electrical utilities or transportation. You will see this meeting is full of rich sharing by you, and that's what makes it actually very interesting. My colleague Danny Spillman will be there sharing some of the basic development work that Esri is doing in advancing the tools. And this is an exciting time. We're making a huge, again, jump from desktops and servers and even web map GIS to a whole system of systems vision where we can interconnect our basic works and share services between and among each other to support this notion of a geographic approach. What is the geographic approach? It's the idea that we can use geographic science layers, seeing through them, analyze the relationships, whether they're economics or environmental or social relationships, bring it all together to support better decision-making, better human action. You know, whether it's locating something or avoiding locating something or protecting something. We need this integrated, holistic way of thinking to support a more sustainable future. And I like that vision, and I know that most of you here in this room buy into that vision, the notion that together we can actually take all of our different disciplines and organizations and support a more sustainable future. You know, you're in for a big treat today because all the way from New York City, Greg Scott is here. He's going to be your keynote. He's going to share what he's doing at a global scale, bringing different countries together, building a system of systems called the SDGs, the Global Sustainability Goals. And you will all be part of this system of systems, as you'll see. I mean, I'm thrilled that Greg is going to be here, and you'll find, okay, he's an Australian from the, what do you call it, the Western Island? Okay, never mind. That's another joke. But listen, he's wonderful. And he's going to share not just conceptually, but also technically how they're building this global system to create a more sustainable future for all of us. You know, these are challenging times. We are seeing the impacts of climate change, even down there in New Zealand. We're seeing the issues of biodiversity loss showing up everywhere on the planet. And how can we really address these? Well, I think it's you and how you do your work and how you bring your work together inside of your organizations that actually will really matter in the end. So I'm thrilled that Greg is here. I'm thrilled that I had at least a chance to share with you where I see this technology is going. But Danny will do even a better job. Thank you for coming, and I wish you all well. I wish I was there enjoying New Zealand like the rest of you. So good luck to you.
So good afternoon. My name is Scott Campbell. I'm the head of GIS technology at Eagle Technology. My role here today is to take you through this afternoon's plenary session. And the plenary session involves a whole bunch of content, technical content, but also context as well. As you heard from Jack, we appreciate you taking the time to come here and join us at this event. We recognise that you come from all over New Zealand and further afield, as we'll see, to join us and hear and connect. The purpose, as we also heard from Jack, is manifold, but includes learning, connecting, and sharing your own stories, as well as hopefully being inspired in your own areas of work. We want to today share with you some of the latest ArcGIS technology, as well as showing how this can be used across this region to address real challenges in any discipline. But before that, I want to talk about something very important. That is you. So you represent almost every discipline in the region. You also represent geographically a very large group. Coming from 9 different countries to join us here in this room today. You also come from across New Zealand, from the very top of the country to the very bottom. Not quite Stewart Island. If we've missed anyone from Stewart Island, shout out. Okay. Welcome. Glad you could make it. I also want to talk, before we get into the main content, a little about your own work. The work that you do and that Jack referenced is very important. It's very varied. And part of this event is understanding what each of you are doing in your different disciplines, but with that common element of using GIS to solve real-world problems. So I want to take a few moments to share some of these examples. The first set of examples look at natural resource management. And by natural resources, we're talking not just about the things that come out of the earth, but things that grow on top of it. From agriculture and forestry, where we've seen big growth area, no pun intended, recently in the use of geospatial to do smart farming, and to reduce the impact that these activities have on the planet, as well as looking at minerals. I want to draw your attention to the one in the bottom right-hand corner, which is an organization called Verde. So we're doing 3D analysis to understand the carbon potential in farmland, which is a really interesting area. In emergency management, GIS is being used across our region. Here we have just a few examples, but over the past 2 days, this morning and yesterday afternoon, we had a dedicated emergency management for GIS summit, which was held here, and many of you are also here for this event. That group were sharing their own work, ideas, and connecting, which is invaluable. Beyond the technology, connecting as a community, as we're doing here, is fantastic. We're going to see some examples of this work later on this afternoon also. GIS is widely used in infrastructure and utilities for everything from managing underground infrastructure to street sign repairs and graffiti removal. The variety of examples shown here on the slide reflect the many ways in which you apply the geographic approach to solve world problems in your own areas. Keeping people safe, extracting information using GeoAI, seeing what others can't, underground, for example, and monitoring infrastructure in real time are all activities that are being done in New Zealand right now using these tools. This is an exciting and growing area, actually. Specifically in the area of water management, GIS has been applied in New Zealand and globally for many, many years. Whether it's freshwater management, keeping the quality and quantities correct to keep us safe, or managing the complex and vital water infrastructure, GIS for water is an important tool that many of you are using every day. We also see GIS being used for understanding and protecting somewhat saltier water, with these 2 examples showing, first of all, Ethos Environmental's work for marine biosecurity work across the top of the North Island, and Auckland University's research into understanding what lies beneath, understanding bathymetric landforms. In the area of public safety, we've seen a real growth in the use of GIS. We're lucky to be able to hear about some of the work that New Zealand Police had been doing at last year's conference in Christchurch, when we saw the many ways that they use GIS across the country. This work continues, and you can see here, including managing large events, planned and unplanned events in New Zealand in very intense urban spaces where geospatial really comes into its own. Beyond police, important work is being done by organizations to map, to understand, and to share detailed GIS data and insights around people, invasive species, and also safety threats. GIS for conservation continues to be an innovative and rewarding space where technology can make a real difference to the work of those at the sharp end, keeping our places pest-free and preserving important biodiversity. Whether focused on mapping plastic pollution in the Marlborough Sounds or the location of endangered species, this community here is incredibly supportive of this work, whether you're working in it directly or you're supporting those who are. And we'll see some more of this work later on this afternoon and also later in the conference. Eagle Technology's own Local Maps product, which is based on top of the ArcGIS technology, is one which is widely deployed across New Zealand and indeed overseas. Sharing galleries or maps or apps, as well as providing intuitive user experience with the map application, we can see that many organizations in this room are using it every day to share their information, especially in self-service mapping workflows. The last example of work that I want to share is one that's a bit different, and I want to thank the guys at Hamilton City for sharing this at the last minute. So New Zealand was proud to be the joint host of the 2023 Women's FIFA World Cup Finals. Hands up if you got to one of those matches. Okay. I was lucky enough to go along to a couple of the matches in Wellington. It was fantastic to have that on our doorstep and come to us. If any of you went to any of the matches in Hamilton, then you would have seen the work of ArcGIS happening in front of your very eyes. As the team at Hamilton City Council used the ArcGIS field apps to plan and lay out the on-field markings with a 1.1 centimetre resolution of accuracy. And they won an award for this, for having the super accurate layouts. They also used it to do the very intricate flower bed layouts, which is an innovative use, I think, to welcome the teams, the supporters and players to Hamilton when they first arrived. So I now want to move to the first of our main stage speakers today. Danny Spillman, as you heard before, is the Corporate Director for Global Business Development at Esri. Danny's been working directly in the GIS and spatial information industry since 1995. He's been with Esri since 1998, and in his tenure at Esri, he held various responsibilities, including sales management and being involved with government, utility, and also the energy sectors. So Danny's current role is that he is the Director of Global Business Development, and this means he's managing the direction and focus of the Esri technologies from a customer perspective. He's really keen on helping customers leverage location-based information to improve their own businesses, and he's got a passion for helping organizations leverage the geographic approach to improve the world around them. Please help me welcome Danny to the stage.
Thank you. Well, hello, everybody. Oh, come on. Let's try this one more. Okay, I'm from Texas, so let's try this. Howdy. Howdy. Okay, that's pretty good. I appreciate the FIFA women's soccer slide because if you watch the U.S. team, well, they just didn't do as well as we had hoped this year. But look, I'm really glad to see all of you here. And I really appreciate Jack telling all of you that, me being here is, better than him. I don't think I can live up to that, but I'm going to give it my best shot. As Scott said, I work for Esri in the States, and on behalf of all the colleagues here and my colleagues back in the United States, I want to thank all of you for coming together. It has been a very difficult last several years. And seeing this many people in this room really brings excitement to the work that all of you have been doing to really make the world a bit better. This year's theme has really been about really creating the world you want to see. And I want you all to take just a few seconds just to think about what that means to you. What's interesting about this is that each one of you actually are playing a role in the world around us today. And I've never seen a group of individuals that are so passionate about the work that you do every day that actually has such a positive impact on your communities, on your country, and the environment and the world around us. The real question is, having a choice. I mean, you think about all of the problems that you run into every day. You watch the news and hear the things that people are talking about. Environmental issues, biodiversity issues, food issues. safety issues, migration issues, all of these things. And being part of something like this, where you actually can have an impact on the world around us, is something pretty special. There's not many industries or technologies that allow you to play this important of a role. Now, when we were putting together the slides for the users conference this year, we really talked about sustainability. And one of the slides that came out was this saying about sustainability starts with geography. Now, that's quite bold, being a geography-based company. But really, everything that gets played into sustainability has some sort of location on the Earth's surface. Its resources, the environment, where people live, how they travel, economic issues, past historical situations. All of these things play a key role in really helping define and understand and really create a sustainable environment. Now, you can probably pick on this slide right here the part of the work that each one of you work in. Some of you may be focused on economics. Some of you may be focused on social. Some of you may be focused on the environment. But no matter where you play or where you work, all of these things really come together to create a new approach to solving sustainability issues. Now, Jack mentioned the geographic approach. And I'm going to tell you a little story about the geographic approach. Because for some of you, you may think this is a new concept. Or maybe you've been at Esri events and it's a new saying that we came up with this year. But I'm going to tell you a story. So there's a small oil company based in the United States. They're actually customer number 23 at Esri. They came to Esri in the early 80s to a small company called Environmental Systems Research Institute and met with a tall, slender guy and said, I want you to help us find the best locations in the United States for us to move our headquarters, where we should have some land, what's closest to the ports. Now you can imagine the size of this project. It probably took Jack and the whole team of Esri, probably 8 people at that time, to sit down and try to figure out where are the places that that company should invest in. Through that project, they actually found the headquarters of that organization where they moved to. They actually acquired some of the land that they have in California and on the coast in Texas. Now, I want you to jump forward 40 years. That same company came back to us. They asked us that same question. But this time they said, we want you to do it across 125 million parcels. We want to use 400 attributes, and we want to get that answer in 60 seconds. And we were able to do that. The approach never changed. The fundamental science that we used to figure out that information was no different than what we did 40 years ago. It's so important to think about the geographic science and the geographic approach that you use to solve problems. Now, what's different about this is really a modern GIS. And you hear this all the time. Well, it's a modern GIS. Other companies talk about a modern approach. But there's no other system that's out in the world today that actually allows you to bring all types of information, whether it's imagery or raster or vector or real-time or 3D or BIM or knowledge graph database, whatever those things are, into a single platform that allows you to apply a geographic approach. Now, the other thing that's so interesting to this modern GIS is really the advancement in how a systems approach has kind of matured over the last 30 years. As Scott so wonderfully said, I have been at Esri since 1998. And I have actually seen this technology grow from a project-type implementation to a department, to an organization, to an idea called a system of system. Here's one of my favorite questions. How many of you thought when you started at the organization you're with, said, I want to buy a GIS system? Very few of you. Most of you probably went there and said, I want to buy a resource management system, or I need a network management system, or I need a retail site location system. And you knew that that system needed to be powered by geography. And from there, you actually started to see that that system was rooted in geography. What's happening now is that those systems you have in place are actually become connected to other systems. So the environmental system is connected to the resource management system, to the local network management system. And this geospatial infrastructure is what's allowing us to share and grow the scale of GIS. So the big challenge as you think about this week is, who are the 2 or 3 organizations that I want to meet this week? How am I going to help connect their GIS with my GIS to solve a much bigger problem? You'll hear Greg speak about the UN work and the SDGs, about how they're connecting different agencies to bring this information together. We're seeing an emergency response, how the local community is connecting to local commercial companies to where people are at. This idea of integrating these systems together is actually what's going to have a major impact in the world around us. You're all going to be responsible for your own system. But actually connecting that system to other systems and creating a global infrastructure of GIS information is really what's going to make this world a sustainable place. Now, I want to wrap on this last slide because I'm a GIS professional. Like, I am very passionate. When someone asks me what I do GIS. GIS helps change the world. It's the work that each of you do in your own organizations every day, the passion that you have around the work and the bringing and trying to solve the problems that you face every day. You in this room are the 1%. You're the 1% that are going to have an enormous impact on the world around us. I really appreciate you being here. I'm going to be here the next couple of days. I've never been to New Zealand before. I understand that there's some parties and all those types of things, and I hope to get to meet as many of you as I can this week. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Danny. So Danny will actually be joining us again tomorrow morning on the stage for the Day 2 plenary to take us through some of the customer stories, some interesting stories we've chosen from around the region that illustrate the business value from using GIS in your various disciplines. So Danny's done a great job of taking us through the geographic approach, the high-level view of how GIS can be used to solve problems. What I now want to do is to take you through the tools themselves. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to get somebody else to do that. Somebody else much better qualified than I, and that's Ishmael Chuvite. So Ishmael is one of the senior product managers at Esri. He's been to this event before, a few years ago, so some of you may have met him previously. He's been at Esri for quite a while, since 2002, so I think he's winning the competition, if it's a competition. He's a geographer by training. He loves helping people leverage GIS to solve real-world problems. His specific area of product expertise is Survey 123 and Quick Capture. Hands up, just a quick poll if you use Survey 123 or Quick Capture. Okay, that's about 78.3%. That's pretty good. If you have any questions, Ishmael's the guy. Before we ask him any questions, we're going to ask Ishmael to come up and talk a little bit about the ArcGIS technology, about Esri's work in the form of the products. Ishmael.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. In the next 15 minutes or so, I want to share with you a few thoughts about what we do in Esri, that is the technology that we build for you to succeed in your mission. And what we build is called ArcGIS. ArcGIS is a comprehensive geospatial system. Engineering a single system that anyone can use in an organization is extremely difficult. But the result is really awesome. As you can see in this slide, it doesn't matter what you do. You can be an analyst, you could be working in the field, you could be a casual user or maybe a citizen that wants to engage with the community. All of them can use geography in a single system, in a single source of truth. And that's very powerful when all of us can work on top of the single truth in the organization through a single map. ArcGIS supports many implementation patterns. Some of you may have used ArcGIS Pro, ArcGIS Desktop, to create maps in your own computer. Or maybe you are using applications in the field. Or who knows, maybe you are helping your organization spread GIS throughout the entire enterprise. The beauty of ArcGIS, again from an engineering perspective, is that it's built to scale. It's built to allow you to grow from a computer to an organization to the entire world. And that has tremendous value. It allows you to expand the use of GIS in your org very, very easily. We are obviously investing in Esri constantly to make advances in geospatial science. We are trying to get the best of the technology to bring to you the most modern product. I'm going to describe just a few things in ArcGIS that are new and hopefully relevant to your work. I won't try to be comprehensive here. It's very, very high level. But my colleagues from Eagle are going to demonstrate with practical workflows some of the technology that I'm going to describe here. So what do you need to do good GIS? What's the foundation of it? Out of the question is data. You need data. How many of you are familiar with the Living Atlas of the World? Many, but not all of you. This is the content in ArcGIS. These are the ready-to-use layers that come with the ArcGIS system. And there are thousands of them. Now, most importantly, there are many layers from New Zealand. People like you are contributing to the Living Atlas of the World, so you can share foundational layers for others to do their work. And I think that's very powerful. Let's have a quick look here at this topographic map. You can use it from ArcGIS Pro, from your mobile apps, from your web apps. What about this imagery? This is the best imagery you can find for the entire country of New Zealand, with high level of detail in urban areas in particular. This one uses the aerial imagery plus data published by Toitu Te Whenua, specifically the addresses and the parcels. These addresses are updated weekly. So you have access to authoritative data for your own country through the Living Atlas of the World. And this data can be accessed from any of the ArcGIS applications you are using, including the attributes. This is an animation, so you can see even more data that you can find. Data, base maps, imagery, data about people, about infrastructure, about environment, all available to you with the click of a button. Now, you put your own layer on top of this, you have an awesome GIS system. Many of you are using ArcGIS to build maps. And there are many advancements in ArcGIS to help you build better maps, to bring more data for your maps. I just want to highlight a couple of things. Of course, ArcGIS Pro has new tools, and you are going to see some of them in action very soon. But I also want to highlight this notion of interactive web mapping. There used to be a time where you could only build maps with ArcGIS Desktop. Now you can do it from your web browser. From a web browser, you can mash up different layers of information, and you have advanced symbology and renderers that you can use to create beautiful maps right from a web browser. This lowers the barrier for map creation within your organization. So you should have a look at those. Now, when you share a map with people, you don't just share the map. You want to share an information product. You want to share an application that is ready to go. And a very popular application that all of us use is ArcGIS dashboards. If you are not familiar with ArcGIS dashboards, You should really spend some time this week learning about them. They are a very powerful way to communicate at a glance important information, often for executives or for people that are coordinating work. One of the things that I'm very excited about is the fact that now your dashboards can work in a mobile device. And you can see some screenshots here with phones. On a tablet, on a phone, you can run your dashboards. Okay, this one coming up, hopefully, it's about allowing people to use ArcGIS from tools that they use on an everyday basis. How many of you use Office products? I mean, everybody, right? Just remember that. Everybody uses Microsoft Office products in your organization. Now, do they have access to GIS? Well, you can enable access to GIS through Microsoft 365. I'll give you a quick example. Let's pretend that you have a list of addresses, like in this Excel spreadsheet. Are you familiar with Excel formulas? Well, you can type in a formula that is going to ask ArcGIS to get the address, geocode it to get the XY coordinates. And from there, they can build them up right from Excel. How cool is that? This is going to help you, again, expand the use of GIS within your own organization. Here's another example. In this case, you are looking at a Microsoft Power Automate flow. Microsoft Automate is a tool for automating repetitive tasks. And it has hundreds of connectors to many third-party applications. Well, it just happens that we have an ArcGIS connector. So when something happens in ArcGIS, you can launch a flow. And like in this case, we can say, well, when an inspection is submitted with ArcGIS, please create a PDF report. And then take that file, upload it into Microsoft OneDrive, and then include the file as an attachment in an email, and push a little message into Teams, a notification. Very powerful. There are lots of workflows where you need to get data from ArcGIS to people who need it in the tools that they use. And Power Automate helps you automate all of this without coding. ArcGIS is often used for spatial analysis. People who want to predict, run analysis to maybe find patterns in geographic information. Again, there are many tools, new geoprocessing tools that you are all familiar with, new tools coming in. But today, I want to talk briefly about this concept of GeoAI. GeoAI combines the world of GIS with artificial intelligence. An obvious one is feature extraction from images. AI, for some specific tasks, is better than humans. It's faster and more accurate, such as have a look at an image and extract the buildings, extract the roads. The machine can do better than we can do if we train it. And the thing is that with ArcGIS, you can train your own AI models and run these feature extraction routines every time you want, very quickly and very accurately. But GeoAI is not only about extracting data from images. It's about analyzing information in tables, vectors, or even in text. And this is all available within ArcGIS. Now, even better, ArcGIS includes pre-trained AI models that you can use right away. Models to do feature extraction, like I was describing before. You see these images, it takes seconds to extract the buildings, the vehicles, the solar panels, animals, tree identification as well. Now you are saying, well, these trained models, we live in New Zealand, everything's a little bit different. Good news, Eagle Technologies has spent quite a bit of time creating pre-trained models that work in New Zealand. So just as an example, you take the Esri tree classification model, you run it in New Zealand, you're not going to find every tree because it has not been necessarily trained with New Zealand imagery. But Eagle has done that for you. So you can literally go into the Living Atlas of the world, look for these tools, download them, and run run them in ArcGIS Pro. I suggest that you give this a go. It looks maybe intimidating at first, of AI, but it's not intimidating. Give it a go and start using pre-trained models. Eventually, you will create your own as well. This one, link analysis, is also, I think, an interesting one. Sometimes there are connections between things that are not geographic. When you are looking at interactions between people, social interactions, or you are looking at representing the supply chain, you need to visualize the connection between entities. Through these link graphs, you can combine graphs with geography, so you can visualize the connection between things. Who is connected to who, right? So this is an extension. It's available in ArcGIS Pro and can be useful in many different scenarios for social research, for intelligence and crime investigation, etc. Okay, imagery. I remember many years ago when I was at the university in the 1900s, I guess. Vector data, ArcInfo. Imagery, ERDAS. Not anymore. ArcGIS is a complete imagery system today. It's the most advanced imagery system. And we can use imagery for all sorts of things, for visualization, for analysis, for modeling. Today, I want to bring your attention to reality mapping. Reality mapping brings together the worlds of photogrammetry and GIS. With reality mapping, you can take imagery and create true orthos. You can really make them accurate on top of your data. I'm not just talking about a little image of your city. This scales up to the entire country. Esri has invested very heavily on reality mapping. This is the result of more than 10 years of research and development. But it's not just ortho. You can take these images and you can create what is known as a 3D image, a mesh. You see this animation here with these buildings? That's all done through reality mapping. You can literally raise from the ground your data thanks to these imageries. And this applies to not just the city, the country, but you can also fly drone imagery and apply reality mapping as well. You can see here some examples. Now, this is interesting, right? A construction site or a small park. Just imagine from these drones, you can get such quality information. The imagery is so accurate, you can create elevation models with 1 centimeter resolution to calculate volumes, to estimate flooding. This is a great tool to bring more foundational data into GIS. You get these images and you create a point cloud, you create a digital elevation model, and you create really true ortho imagery for display. Really, really powerful technology. CAD and BIM is also interesting. You can now bring BIM models into ArcGIS. So Esri has a strategic alliance with Autodesk. So you can bring data from Autodesk into your GIS system. You're going to see a great demo in just a few minutes about this. I'm really, really excited. I also want to talk briefly about using GIS technology, ArcGIS, in the field. And I think this presents a great opportunity at different levels. The most obvious one is data capture. With ArcGIS, we can digitally transform many workflows that today use paper. With our mobile apps, you can collect data more quickly and more accurately. That's an obvious one. Our mobile apps are designed so you can communicate from the field with people in the field. Big bonus. That means you can help coordinate fieldwork much better. We introduced this concept in our mobile apps called location sharing. This is specifically designed so you can tell where people are at all times and where people have been in the past. And finally, our mobile apps also integrate thanks to things like Power Automate and Make.com with the rest of your organization. We have 3 mobile apps. You are going to see demos, field maps, survey 1, 2, 3, and quick capture. And you might be wondering, why do we have 3 mobile apps? Well, think about this. People working in the field, what data are they collecting? What type of training do they have? How are they collecting data? We have 3 applications so you can fit the way people work with the right user experience. Could be even maps, forms, or rapid data capture. Again, more through the demonstration. This is my last slide. It's just want to make that point about use ArcGIS for what it was built. ArcGIS is built to help you support your organization. It's built so anyone in your org can take advantage of the geographic approach. ArcGIS is built so you can grow from a small computer to the enterprise or the cloud. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ishmael. So a couple of things that Ishmael pointed out there. The GeoAI technology he covered, we're going to see that in more detail in the Road Ahead section. That's on Wednesday afternoon. Got a bit of a focus on AI and where it fits in with the Esri technology going forward. The second thing I wanted to point out is for those of you who haven't yet registered for the post-conference workshops, there's a workshop on Thursday being run specifically on using the models that Ishmael talked about there in your own environments in ArcGIS Pro. So we've got a one-day workshop on Thursday. If you can stay on an extra day and you haven't registered yet, then please see the folks outside to register and join us about how you can bring GeoAI into your own workflows. So Ishmael and Danny have done a great job of telling us about the high-level vision of Esri and the geographic approach, as well as it's giving us an overview of the technology itself, of ArcGIS and some of the products. Before we get on to the individual product demonstrations, I think it's really important to talk about the why. So the why in this case comes from a keynote speaker that Jack's already given away some information about, to talk about the role of geography in sustainability, a topic that's very close to his heart. Now, before I get the speaker to come up here, I do want to point out that it's not often I get to correct Jack Dangermond on matters of geography. But I'd like to point out that our next speaker isn't actually from Australia. He's from Rotorua, down the road. So he's even closer to the home than we perhaps thought. Greg Scott originally comes from Rotorua, as I said. He's had a 25-year period working at Geoscience Australia. So his accent, if you tried to geocode his accent, it might end up on the Norfolk Island area. Greg is now based at United Nations Stats Division in New York, and his role as a secretary of the UNGGIM. Greg has provided strategic policy advice and leadership and guided the development of coordination and implementation of the substantive Global Geospatial Programme and content for UNGGM since 2012. Greg himself possesses formal qualifications in cartography and survey mapping from New Zealand, and is a graduate diploma in geography from the Australian National University, as well as a PhD in geomatics engineering from the University of Melbourne. To talk about the topic of GIS and sustainability, please help me in welcoming Greg Scott.
Thanks, mate. Kia ora. Thanks for that correction too, Scott. This is what happens when you have a conversation with Jack a couple of weeks ago in Washington. So I will have a laugh out of him when I do get back. So I'm going to give a bit of an overview in 2 parts around geospatial technology, the SDGs, and work that we're doing in terms of implementation of the SDGs, particularly in developing countries. So I'm going to give just a snippet of information around the SDGs themselves today, and tomorrow going into a lot more detail and a bit of a deeper dive as to how we're actually looking at addressing some of these challenges. But I thought what I would do is just spend a bit of time talking about the SDGs. Now, if I was to ask, is anyone in this room not know what the SDGs are. I'm hoping I'm not going to see anyone, right? And I know I won't. But what's really important, do they actually matter to us? Do they have an impact on what we do? Does that make us think about how we do things in our lives and how we do things in our work? Now, I come from a work environment over the last 12 years that's been really focused on developing countries, and in fact, some of the least developed countries around the world. And you take a very, very different perspective in terms of needs. What are my needs? Some of us, our needs may be where I live, what I have, what vehicle I have. In many countries, needs can be, do I have water? Do I have food? Do I have shelter? And all of this is still about geography. So I want to make, I guess, as a start to this presentation and the one tomorrow, is two statements. One being that these 17 SDGs, these 17 goals of the 2030 Agenda, are in fact inclusive, cross-cutting, transformative, and integrated. In other words, what it means is that when the 2030 Agenda was being decided by our leaders from around the world, they actually arrived at a recipe of 17 goals, 169 targets, 230 odd indicators that have actually proved to be bulletproof. They haven't been found to be weak. And as we get to that halfway point of the 2030 Agenda, that's still proving the case. The challenge we have is how we're going in actually making progress against those 17 goals. And that's where our work comes in. So in a really simplistic way, when we think about geospatial information, and we've already seen some great videos today, some statements, Danny was speaking about it, Jack was speaking about it, is that geospatial information, geographic information, location information is also transformative, inclusive, cross-cutting, and integrative. And even more importantly, it tells us about what is happening where, when, how, and why, from a global level right down to a local level. That's really important. We know that, but many don't necessarily know that. And particularly at a political and decision-maker level, that becomes very complex. So just a quick recap on the 2030 Agenda for those that may not be so aware. First of all, it was decided by all countries, all 193 member states in September 2015 at the UN General Assembly. The history on the 2030 Agenda actually has predecessors. There was the Earth Summit in Rio in 1992, and there was also the Millennium Development Goals that gave us some history. As I said, the SDGs, 17, targets, 169, indicators, 230 to 232. They're moving around a bit at the moment. And they are based on 3 development pillars: the environment, social, and economic domains of our humanity and our planet. The mantra of the 2030 Agenda is to leave no one behind, and so that it is inclusive and transformative. Our achievement from all countries towards the Sustainable Development Goals is reviewed every year, every July in New York, in what's known as the HLPF, the High Level Political Forum. And in that High Level Political Forum, they have what's known as voluntary national reviews of countries. And I'll talk a little bit about New Zealand's in just a moment. At the same time, they also are talking about this period now from 2020 to 2030 is this decade of action. And just last week, we had our SDG Summit. And that SDG Summit, where world leaders came together, and you may have seen some of this on the news and TV, is an action about accelerating the implementation of the SDGs, given that where we are today after all the challenges we've had in recent years, whether they be around COVID, geopolitical, climate change, financing for development, and the fact that we're having a divide that's growing between the developed and the developing world, and we're not seeing that being reduced in any real way. The 2030 Agenda, as I said, with the 17 goals, is based on the environment. Then building on the environment is the social aspects and the economy. So that's how the 17 goals are broken. And at the very top is the goal 17, which is really about partnerships for the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. The goals are also very, very integrated or interlinked. They have dependencies and codependencies, obviously. One of the big challenges around this is that we have terminologies now about synergies in the SDGs, and we also have trade-offs. And we hear now a lot of decision makers around the world talking about the trade-offs. So if we want economic prosperity, what's the trade-off against the environment? If we want social prosperity, what's the trade-off economically and environmentally, etc., etc.? And the challenge we have is we cannot disconnect any of those goals. That's the nature of their inclusivity. Moving on to New Zealand. New Zealand's in a pretty special place. We know that, both geographically, economically, socially. Just where it sits in the world makes it very, very unique. It has done one voluntary national review in 2019. It's only done one review. A number of countries are now on their third and heading towards their fourth, but New Zealand's only ever done one in 2019. That review was very much focusing on where we sit in the global world, so what's New Zealand's relationship to the Pacific, to the region, and out globally, and how are we addressing things like equity and inclusion and our economic positioning. So that was in 2019. Where is it today? And I'm just doing a snapshot from the SDGs report from 2023, this year. And you don't need to go into any of the detail, but just a couple of highlights. When we think of New Zealand's ranking in the world, it's 27 out of 166 countries that are reporting on the SDGs. 27th in the world. You may think that's not so good. It's really good. Why is it really good? Because there's only 2 countries outside Europe that are ahead of you, Japan and Canada. And in Europe, when we think about particularly the Nordic countries, they're very, very high in that SDG matrix, just based on a lot of their circumstances that they have. So New Zealand's very, very highly rated and ranked. And you can see that its performance is also very high, but it has challenges. And these big challenges are particularly along the environment when we think about climate, life on land, life underwater, and also in terms of measuring on poverty and other areas. But it is making good progress. But there's a but. New Zealand's making good progress. Oh, by the way, Australia's 40 in the ranking. In case, I know you're thinking, where does it sit? It's 40 in the ranking. So it's a bit of a way down. There's a but. And it's about this inclusiveness and this interconnectiveness. The global economy and our global society is interconnected. We know that. We saw that with COVID. We can't disconnect ourselves from things. But a lot of understanding around location and geospatial and where geospatial has a role to play is also very difficult for people to understand when they look at this. So where does that fit? When in reality it fits everywhere. But we have a challenge, and part of that challenge is in communication. I'm just going to play for a moment a short video, and I want you to just look at it. And this audience, more than any other, might be able to tell me when that video was made. So have a quick look, and at the end I want you to see if you can tell me when that video was made, and I want to tell you a little story behind this particular video.
hunger, poverty, winning the fight against disease, urban development, deforestation, careful use of water resources, and the development of smarter land management, intelligent transportation, environmental challenges, building resilience of our cities and infrastructure. They are all happening right now, somewhere. As our planet is becoming more crowded, the demand for diminishing natural resources is growing. Income gaps are widening, and people are being left behind. Geographic location and information about these locations shows us where social, environmental, and economic conditions occur. Where are people at risk from rising sea levels? How do we protect the people living there? Where is disease occurring? Where might it spread to next? How do we contain it? How many hectares of forest are there? Where are they? Are we managing them sustainably? How many people do not have access to good health care, education, fresh water, or regular reliable public transport? Geographic information can show us when and why things have happened in the past. It can show us why and where they might happen in the future. And if we know where, we can take action. Geographic information about people and the planet makes the invisible visible. It helps us to make better decisions and make better use of our resources. By collecting geographic information, we can identify patterns in human and natural processes, predict the outcomes, and take preventative measures where and when needed. Reliable and authoritative geographic information provides the framework for measuring, monitoring, and achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, improving people's lives, and protecting the planet. Because everything that happens, happens somewhere, and knowing where is the key to making good decisions and policy.
Okay, any guesses when that was made? What do we have? April 2015, before the SDGs were determined. The Open Working Group was negotiating on the SDGs and whether they would include geospatial information and Earth observations into the 2030 agenda. And they had no clue what we were talking about. In fact, they asked us, when we were talking to some of the PR folks, to remove geospatial and call it geographic, because no one understands geospatial. Where are we today compared to that video? Has things changed? Has climate got better? Has poverty got better? We don't have Ebola anymore, do we? We had something better than that. Ebola was ignored because it was in the developing world. It was in Africa. So the developed world didn't really worry about it. COVID did not affect Africa. It affected the developed world a lot more. So I guess the message is really about where we sit today in this midpoint of the 2030 agenda. And we, when we refer it to a game of footy, for example, we're in the halftime break. We're halfway through the 2030 agenda. The news is not good. This is our latest report and quotes from our Secretary General. And we've got a lot of red and yellow cards at the moment in the team, and we need to work out how we best address this for the future. And you all have a role to play in that. Now, getting to the numbers. Traffic lights, it's pretty easy. Red's bad, green's good. Grey means we have no data. That's where we are on the SDGs at the moment. And we can see there with a number of those, when we look at progress, we're seeing we're going backwards rather than forwards. And as we look at things around climate and cities, look at cities as well. where we're just not making enough progress. Why does cities not work in this? Because a lot of this data is collected and aggregated to a national level. It doesn't include disaggregated local data. It doesn't include what we do in cities, in towns, in villages around the world. But we know we can measure that, and we know we are measuring it. So with my last slide, and as a bit of a segue into getting into this more tomorrow, is that when we think about the SDGs, we think about the data and the technologies and the people and the resources that we have at our fingertips, and now even more so, the different industry sectors that are playing a greater role in the different thematic areas when we think about infrastructure and energy and all of these areas around the environment and urbanisation. The role that we have to play is growing exponentially, and we may not necessarily know that, but it is. And this is really the call for action in terms of our community. And we think about geospatial information, our geospatial data ecosystem is giving us opportunity to take advantage of how we progress development around the world. And if we lead some of that, we then start assisting developing countries just through knowledge transfer and sharing. I'll talk more about some of this tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks very much. So as Greg said, he's going to be presenting again tomorrow in the plenary session on a little bit more of the how, especially focusing on the open data sharing component. We now want to change direction a little bit and focus a bit more on the technology. We've heard about the why at a high level. We've heard about the vision from Jack and from Danny about the geographic approach. We now want to pivot and look at some of the examples of the technology. But this year, for those of you who are regulars at this event, you'll notice we're doing things a little bit differently. Instead of going product by product and showing you what's new in each of these great pieces of software, we wanted to look at it in the terms of scenarios. So we've actually asked the team to come up with 8 scenarios which reflect new capabilities in the software, use data sets which are either open data sets or are publicly available in some other form, or well known within many organizations, and then to connect those to real-world scenarios, which in turn connect to the goals that Greg has spoken about. These scenarios, as I mentioned, feature the latest versions of the ArcGIS tools that you use in your own organizations. And we've paired them up with data sets which hopefully you recognize many of them, and many of them you'll have and you use in your own organizations. Some of them are perhaps using in a different way to the way you would traditionally expect to use them. To tell this story, we're using the Eagle Technology team, but you will definitely see some new faces this year from previous years. A lot of these new faces are actually this year's graduates from Eagle's GIS Academy, the Geospatial Accelerated Learning Program, or GALLOP. So I'm sure in helping tell these stories, you'll give all the support that they need to tell these stories as well as they can. ArcGIS, as we know, integrates all different kinds of data sources. And the idea of a digital twin consumes those data sources to create a digital version of the real world. Our version of the real world, in this case, is spatial. In our first scenario, I want to ask the team to give us an example of a digital twin, in this case, not representing a country or a city, which it could do, but to represent a campus. And for this, we've been given permission by Massey University's Manawatu campus to experiment with data sets which they had and workflows which they needed to do to see how a digital campus could be managed using ArcGIS tools. To tell this story, I'm going to pass across to Boudewijn and Josh.
Thank you, Scott, and good afternoon, everybody. Let's take off and fly over to the campus of Massey University. And for people who don't know where it is, it's on the same island as we are now, near Palmerston North, just on the other side of the Manawatu River. And we can see that clearly here on the topographic base map. So when we zoom in, we can start seeing the digital twin for the campus. And this forms the basis for managing the campus, including its assets, but also its future development. And let me show you how I started creating this foundation for a digital twin using publicly available data. And we'll start off with the imagery base map. And Palmerston North usually flies their imagery every year, and that imagery gets included into this base map. Another base layer is the elevation layer. So this elevation layer uses all the best available elevation data and gives a nice idea of the elevation on the campus and surrounding the campus. Just bring in that 3D perspective of the campus. This elevation layer is derived from the LiDAR that is available, that we visualize here using the elevation visualization. Nice combination of words. And what we've done as well is we combine the base map with the LiDAR to create a more realistic view of all of the objects and vegetation on this campus. And this isn't just a pretty picture, you can actually use this LiDAR in a scene as well. So for example, to measure objects. So you can measure the height of the trees, or in this case, the height of this building here. And talking about buildings, these are all the LiDAR points that are classified as building. And I'm showing these because with ArcGIS, using the 3D building solution, you can derive 3D building objects from them, that we've done here. And what I've done is visualize them using the sketch outline, just because it is an approximation of the buildings. But we'll bring in some higher detailed buildings later on, but this is a great start. What I've done as well is using the OSM building layer from Living Atlas to give the names to the buildings, so it's easier to orientate yourself on the campus. Now from that same LiDAR, we can also extract the trees. And these trees, they contain the height and the crown width, and we can use these to visualize them as a 3D object. But we can also bring these into our tree inventory and then start adding them to our vegetation management plan. So as a final layer of our basis for this digital twin is the Living Atlas layer from LINS using the lakes. And using the new visualization techniques of water that bring in the reflection, we can bring in the little bit of realism to our scene. And this is how everyone here can start building their foundation for a digital twin. But what I want to do now is go over to Josh to show us how we can bring in some data from the BIM world into this digital twin.
Thanks, Boudewijn. Because of the partnership between Autodesk and Esri, it is now easier than ever to bring in your high-definition BIM data from the Autodesk Construction Cloud into ArcGIS. And here we are looking at the Aghort C building from the extracted 3D buildings layer. So we can highlight specific buildings by focusing just on the selected one. Or we can clip the existing building feature to make some space. Now that we have created this space, we can bring in the highly detailed BIM model. We can then use the Building Explorer to explore further. We can show specific levels of the building. We can also focus on specific categories, such as architectural or structural. And we can also switch between the different construction phases of a project. For example, stakeholders can compare how their building could look before and after a redevelopment. And also, using a pop-up, we can find information about the attributes stored in the BIM model about this building. An attribute we may be interested in here is the building phase. In this case, it is proposed, which is phase 1 in the Building Explorer. And then by uploading this model into ArcGIS Pro through the Autodesk Cloud, each GIS asset is linked directly to its counterpart. And along with the Revit models, Massey provided us with some CAD drawings of their utilities, some of which we brought into our digital twin, which Boudewijn will show you now.
Yeah, so one of those CAD files that we got was about the streetlights on the campus. So of course we can bring those into our digital twin as well. as we do here, just as 2D points. But these points contain some information about the type and the height. So again, we can use those to visualize them as 3D models in a digital twin. We can bring these into our streetlight inspection and monitoring system. And what we can do as well is we can visualize the distribution of the light. And what we can see here in red is a light that has reported a fault, either through a notification or by connecting it to an IoT sensor. But at least now we can see the area that it's affecting, and based on how it's affecting the area, we can prioritize our repairs of this light. And of course, this information isn't just available in this scene. It flows through the whole ArcGIS system, so we can tap into this information into other apps as well. Like this operations dashboard, where we can see in the map and on the list on the right that a light is indeed reporting a fault. Now going back to the digital twin, because those street lights, they take up a little bit of space in the underground as well, just to make sure that they don't fall over. But there's other objects that take up space in that underground. And one of them is the trees. So the trees with their roots, they use the space in the underground. And here we visualized the space that they take up using a cylinder. And let's go underground and look at it from beneath. What we can do as well is bring in the cables. And what that allows us to do is we can see potential conflicts in the 3D space. But having this information about the underground also allows us to plan. For example, when we want to add new trees, to make sure that we're not going to be digging where we probably shouldn't. And now let's go back to Jos, because there's a new development happening on the campus that Jos can tell us more about.
Thanks, Boudewijn. So Massey University are looking to expand their campus, and they're working on a new building. We can bring this new development into our scene to understand how it will impact other features within its environment. We can look at this through a relatively new app called ArcGIS GeoBIM, which further connects the ArcGIS cloud to the Autodesk cloud. And GeoBIM allows all stakeholders who are involved in the design, construction, and operation phases of an infrastructure project to explore BIM data, project issues, and engineering documents in a geographic context. Now let's see how this can be done. So GeoBIM's Link Explorer feature allows the maintenance crew to find relevant information about the assets in their building efficiently. Ooh. This can be done by linking an asset from the GIS interface to documents that are stored in the Autodesk Construction Cloud, such as a PDF of an installation manual. And we can also add issues into our GeoBIM projects. So these will be useful if you needed to communicate to Autodesk users any issues the building has with the GIS features in its surrounding environment. And GeoBIM also creates an issues dashboard, which is supported natively in the user interface. And when creating a note or issue in GeoBIM, the data is added to a feature service. Here we have visualized this as a 3D symbol with a label that shows the issue. And part of the planning and design process of a new development is to interact with any stakeholders that are involved, including students and staff. There are many apps that can be created to share this design to a wider audience. And one cool and easy way is by using the 360 VR application, which you can create directly from SceneViewer. So here we are looking over the Massey University campus in the 360 VR application. We can pan around by moving the tablet.
Sorry. Yeah, so we've got a great example of a 360 VR of the campus. Doesn't seem to be showing on the screen, but feel free to come visit us after the plenary to have a look at this.
Okay. So a digital twin forms the foundation for managing environment, assets, and planning for change. And using readily available layers combined with your own data and the results of analysis, we can plan for a future we want to see. Back to you, Scott.
So it's unfortunate the last demonstration didn't quite work. I think it's a cabling issue rather than a GIS technology issue in this instance. It is definitely worth the wait. And plan B is we all come up on stage and stand behind Josh and we can see how it looks. The 360 VR capability in ArcGIS Online within the scenes is something that's a bit of a hidden gem, to be honest. I only discovered it myself relatively recently, but it's a great way to give a 360 VR experience on any device using an existing scene. It's really pretty cool. The other thing I wanted to take away from the demonstration we saw there was that they were creating a digital twin of a campus for operations, understanding streetlights and trees, as well as the building phases. Those are all data sets which were uncovered in the process of us working with Massey University over a few weeks. These are data sets that the GIS folks maybe didn't necessarily know about, but when we uncovered them and connected them through, they were really valuable digital assets in that geographic context, which was fantastic. So maybe an encouragement to all of you is to look and see what the digital assets you have in other parts of your organizations that can be brought in, geospatially enabled, and give results like you saw from Bauderbane and Josh. If I keep talking for long enough also, it's perhaps connect the demo will start working. No? No? Yes? No? Okay, we're gonna go for a break in that case. This is a planned break. Dwayne mentioned that this is the biggest geospatial gathering we've had in New Zealand ever, which is fantastic. Another first today is we're actually slightly ahead of time on this plenary, which is not normally the case if I'm involved in things. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a short break. We're saying a restart at 3:15. If I can ask you to be back a little bit earlier, because we are ahead of time at 3:10, it means that we can bank that time for the second part. Okay, you see what I'm saying? Okay. In the meantime, please go outside. There's tea and coffee being served outside, and we'll see you back here at 3:10. Thank you very much.